This whole thing makes no sense. Why would anyone create a new game when there are already 10,000 others already on the market? Everything's already been invented in this hobby. You should play games, not design them. I'm Adam Porter, I'm a board game designer from Wales, and this is my conversational series where I look at YouTube comments that I've had over recent weeks or months and then respond to them in a little bit more depth than I can manage to do in just a written reply on YouTube. So this first comment is one that I received in response to my video 10 Types of Board Game Designer and How to Discover Your Own Style. So let's have a quick look at the video just for a few seconds and then we'll come back and I'll respond to that comment. So with that in mind, I'm going to try and pin down my own goals as a designer. Now I've got 20 wooden person tokens and I'm going to share them out among the different categories to try and determine my own designer profile. So let's have a look. I'm going to start off by putting one of them on each thing, I think. That'll give me 10 left over to spread out a little bit wider, won't it? So let's put one generic wooden person token. If only there was a name I could use for these, but I guess we'll have to stick with generic wooden person GWP tokens. So what does that create for me? So does it make any sense making board games at this point? I mean, look at this wall of games behind me. There's more over there behind the camera. There's more down here. There's more in the cupboards over there, and there's more upstairs, right? There are thousands and thousands of games out there. Thankfully, I haven't got thousands in my house, but I'm approaching that point. It's crazy, right? I can't play all of these games. Nobody can. And lots of the games that come out repeat things that others games have already done before. Why do we need to design any more? I have sympathy with that that commenter who made this point. I'm being devil's advocate a little bit here, right? I mean, obviously I make games constantly. I can't stop it even if I wanted to, right? It's built into me, it just happens. I'm dreaming about making games. Any spare moment where I've got nothing else to do, it's bubbling away in my mind. And then there's always the next project that I want to get onto. So I can't stop myself, frankly, even if I wanted to. Nonetheless, right, is it even worth doing? And I do have those moments of doubt as a designer. I've got very limited time. I've got a young baby, you know, I've got a full-time job that is not game design, and increasingly that has added responsibility, takes up more and more of my time. I'm married, I've got a lot going on in my life, and game design is just one bit of it. Not only do I have game design though, I also have a YouTube channel to maintain, and you'll see that I'm actually struggling to do that over recent months. I'm not getting the same output that I used to have and that some other YouTubers achieve because of everything else that's going on in my life. And then there's playing games. Now I've only got limited free time, and in that free time I'm either going to design games, I'm going to play games, or I'm going to make YouTube videos. It's one of the three. The one that gets dropped first is playing games. Right? I don't play as many games as I used to. I don't play as many games as I'd like. And since I've had the baby, I play very, very few games at all, really, frankly, apart from my own prototypes. Making YouTube videos is difficult, right? It's difficult to find the time. I need a space that's quiet. I need the baby and my wife not to be around. So I have to wait for that moment. Game design, on the other hand, is something that I can do pretty much any time, right? I can just sit and think through game ideas. I can jot them down on my phone or on a scrap of paper, come back to them later. If I'm up with my baby in the night, then I can be jotting down notes or thinking through game design. I often, you know, I'm sat there holding this sleeping baby and thinking, well, there's nothing much else I can do, so I'll tap away on my phone writing down my game design ideas. Playtesting them is another thing, of course, finding time to do that. But I do get into that mindset of, why am I doing this? I'm not even playing games anymore. Like, I got into this because I love playing them and I'm not getting the opportunities. Anyway, this is turning into a little bit of a therapy session for me, which is not what I intended. Why do we do it? Why do we design games? I mentioned I've got this internal drive to do it. But it's like books and movies and music. We could make any of those art forms. We could say, why do people produce more? There's more than anyone could possibly ever consume. There's thousands and thousands or millions of examples, fantastic examples of each of those different forms. So why are games any different? They're a little different to books and films, I suppose, in that a book or a film, technically speaking, once you've read it or seen it, is kind of done. I know we do revisit books and films, but you know, we're going to have the same experience the second time as we did the first. Games, you could play them over and over again. Why does anyone need anything more than just the one game? If you've got a copy of chess, you could play that forever, yeah? And if you enjoy it, you're never going to get sick of it, you're never going to get bored, and you could just keep going with that single game. Why do we need any other games after the ones that were produced, you know, 10,000 years ago or whenever it was that that chess and Go were first invented, or checkers or Senet or the Royal Game of Ur? We've been creating games for millennia, frankly. We just do it as humans, don't we? Part of the thing is they sell, right? There are people out there who want to buy them and they want the new stuff. This industry is really booming. It's massive now and people want the next thing. And that's how you end up with taking over your house like I've got here. One game after another. And I always want more. I always want the next thing. So there's a market for it. That's one reason why we do it. And I think we haven't exhausted mechanisms. Yes, people retread similar things, but there's constantly new games coming out that I find surprising, that I haven't come across something similar before. And even if something similar has happened before, it may have happened years ago and it's no longer available and I've never heard of it and it was in a different country where I could never have got hold of it anyway. So even something that isn't totally unique can still feel really, really fresh. So there's a myriad of reasons to still design, but I do think we need to make time to play games. And I think sometimes, you know, that can get kind of lost in the shuffle. And you can, when you turn something into a job, which, you know, this is sort of becoming a side job for me. It provides a portion of my income, not a big portion, but it does provide a portion. At that point, sometimes you can lose the fun in it, and you can stop looking at, you know, what was the thing that originally brought you into it? What was the thing that you found fun about it in the first place, which was playing games? And so I need to get back to that. So I've got some sympathy with my commenter here. That was a long explanation. So the next comment here is from a video which is called How to Make Money from Board Game Design, which is a really early video on my channel. I hesitate to say that actually. There were several years where I did a lot of reviews and stuff. This was when I started to move into talking about game design. It did really well. I got loads and loads of views. I'd have to go back and watch it to see if it actually holds up. I suspect there's probably naive information in there that I'd want to revisit and refresh. So the comment is, if you play a lot of games while you're working on a game, or even beforehand, your game is going to tend to pick up characteristics of the games that you're playing. Does that mean that a better game is a game that is more like everyone else's? So the first point here really is that a game's quality, how good a game is entirely unrelated to how similar or dissimilar it is to other games that have gone before. So for example, if you look at Wingspan, it's a really, really good game. Finspan and Wormspan came out later, and they are also really, really good games, despite being very similar to Wingspan. Now, you may not want to buy them because you've already got Wingspan and you don't want to have that similar experience, but that doesn't take away from the quality of the follow-up. So, you know, I've got numerous different versions of Carcassonne. They're very similar, but they're all good games because Carcassonne is a really good game. So that's the first point. It's a different question to ask, is a game commercially viable? Is it a good product? As opposed to, is it a good game? Okay, even a rip-off game. Let's say you've got a duplicate version of what game might get ripped off these days, Azul, for example. Maybe there's a counterfeit copy of Azul, or they changed the name a little bit and just tweaked a few bits here and there. It's still going to be a really good game, even though it's totally unethical and a complete rip-off and it's got poor quality components and so on. The game is going to be solid because it's based on something solid regardless of the ethics. So it may not be a great product, but it's a good game, okay? So quality of the game is a different thing to similarity and a different thing to commercially viable. Repeating what other games have done before is not necessarily a great commercial move. Okay, because if people are going to look at it and just go, well, that's just Ticket to Ride all over again, no one's going to buy it. But there are also people who look at it and go, oh, that's a lot like Ticket to Ride. I know how to play Ticket to Ride. I love it. I want that. So there are people who are out there who are looking for things that are very similar to the things that they know. And that's the constant fine line that designers have to tread. We want familiarity. Okay, purchasers really like familiarity. It removes a whole ton of the barriers that prevent people from getting involved in games. Complexity, new ideas, new concepts, things that maybe to us experienced gamers, things like worker placement or deck building that seem very familiar and simple, they're really daunting to the majority of purchasers. So introducing a new system, something that is totally innovative and never been seen before, actually it's quite a hard sell to a lot of people because they just want to play something similar. Like they've been brought up playing Monopoly or Scrabble or Cluedo or whatever. Similarity to those things really helps. If you're going to sell Mysterium, a game where, you know, is it a social deduction game? It's a deduction game, certainly, where you're interpreting picture images to try and work out who is the murderer, where were they located, what weapon did they use. Sounds a bit like Cluedo, right? Plays nothing like Cluedo, okay? But that familiarity really helps when you're trying to sell it to people. This is like Cluedo, but it's got all this beautiful artwork and we're interpreting images. It really helps. So familiar systems, familiar concepts, familiar themes can actually be the thing that draws people in and can actually make a product really, really commercially viable. We want to remove barriers, but we also want to innovate without challenging our players too much, okay? Now, you may have an audience who loves to be challenged, right? You may have built up a relationship with your audience where that's what they expect. That's your brand, and that's fine. You know, if you're Mind Clash or, you know, you're Vital Lacerda and you want to make games that are super complex, your players are going to be able to bear that because they're used to it. They know what to expect from you. But that's not true of the average consumer out there. And if you want to get the maximum possible audience, I think, yeah, we need to throw a little bit of something, throw them a bone, a little bit of something familiar in there. So the next question is probably a little bit related, and it comes from a video called A Decade of Board Game Design Wisdom. Now this was a series of 10 videos where I gave 100 different tips that I'd picked up over my career so far over the last decade. And this was from videos numbers 10 to 1. Don't make the game which you want to play. I feel like I'm contradicting what I've said previously. Of course, you can make the game which you want to play, but if you make the game that you want to play, you've got to consider that it may be you don't find too many other people who want to play it with you. All right, you are probably not representative of the entire market. I know I'm not. Okay, I like some weird games, right? I'm not representative. Lots of my favorite games are not commercial smash hits, right? So if I make the games that I want to play, well, they're not going to do massively well in the market. And the comment is, would you say that don't design the game that you want to play might not apply to a first-time designer? Another of your lessons is don't publish your first game. It seems like you should encourage first-time designers to design a game that interests them, since broad market is unlikely to matter. It might be more motivating. I agree with this, actually. I do make a big point about don't design the game that you want to play, because I hear so often the opposite. I hear it all the time, and I want to kind of push back against it because I think it's potentially misleading. I know where it comes from, but that's why I make the opposite point. Now, when I say don't design the game you want to play, what I don't mean is find the game that you want to play and then don't design it. I mean, don't design a game just because you want to play it, right? You, by all means, design a game that you want to play, but that shouldn't be the reason that you design it. The first and foremost thing is to look out for what do other people want, right? They're the people who are going to be buying it, who are going to be taking this game on, who are going to be producing it, selling it. What do they want? And then try and create something for them, okay? We're creating entertainment here for other people. So the product's got to work for people beyond just yourself. Then you look at that product and go, do I like this, and am I happy to invest a lot of time working on it? There's no point designing a game that you don't enjoy, okay? But there's also no point in designing a game that you do enjoy that nobody else does. I'll retract that a little bit. There is a point, but it's limited, of limited value. The only person that's going to get enjoyment from that is you. And the only person who's ever going to buy it is people exactly like you, and there's not going to be all that many of them out there. So I think a little bit of understanding your audience, getting to know them, is really important, okay, early in the design process if you want to design a really good commercially viable product. If you just want to design for the fun of it, if you just want to design to create art, fine, you can do what you like. And actually that brings me back to this first point and this commenter. They're right. I'm doing a disservice to the first time designers there, because I think your first games probably should be just things that you would enjoy, and you shouldn't be looking to get them published. People don't sell the first painting that they ever paint. They don't sell the first book that they ever write or the first story that they ever write. You know, you've got to learn the process. It's a craft, this thing of game design. You've got to learn that craft. So don't expect your first game to get out there. The first games are experiments, right? You might be lucky, but that's not the aim, right? The aim is just to experiment, enjoy, fall in love with the process, and as the commenter says, get motivated, right? So designing what you want to play is a fantastic starting point. That said, if you do intend to, run this as a business, okay, even if it's not your full-time job, even if it's a side hustle, okay, it's still a business. And I think at a certain point, you've got to shift into that mindset of, I'm a professional here and I'm creating products that other people have got to want. And so I think if you can bring that mindset early into the process, part of your development is not just about tinkering with mechanisms, but it's also developing that empathy and that psychology and that ability to look at other people and work out what do they want and what do they need. And that means attending gaming groups and watching videos online and reading articles and immersing yourself in the world of gamers. And not just the world of hobby gamers who are obsessed with it, but the wider community who just play games here and now, once in a while. And what do they want? And how can we get them involved as well? So the next question comes from a more recent video, which is called Feeling Like a Failure, a video all about rejection. I'll show you a quick clip. Rejection. It's something every board game designer faces, especially when pitching to publishers. You put your heart and your soul into a game, you playtest extensively, produce prototypes, travel to conventions, pitch the game, and they pass. It hurts, but it's not the end of the road. In this video, we're going to look at how to handle rejection, what it really means, and most importantly, how to turn it into an opportunity. And the question says, is it okay to repitch a rejected board game that you've invented? And if so, how long should one wait before repitching? So I assume this commenter means repitching to the same publisher who's already rejected it, because obviously my games get rejected all the time and I pitch them to other publishers. So we're talking here about repitching something to somebody who's already rejected it. I think that's difficult. I've done it, or I've tried to do it. No, I've done it. Usually I've done a big retheme on the game. I've changed the mechanisms, right? I've tried to address the thing that they didn't like in that first thing. And then I've tried to give it a retheme so that I can kind of hopefully get past that first barrier where they look at it and go, well, this is exactly the same game you showed me before. But they're not easily fooled, right? They look at it and they go, well, you've just rethemed this. And then they've got plenty of games to look at. Publishers aren't really inclined to waste time, and I think they might consider it a bit of a waste of time, like a high risk to invest a lot of time in assessing a game to see if it's improved if they've rejected it previously. Now, you might sometimes meet a publisher who rejects a game and they say, if you want to show us it again in the future with a bit of development, these are some things to work on. Then you've got the in, right? They've given you permission to repitch it. That said, you don't need permission, right? You can always send an unsolicited submission to a publisher and they can choose to ignore it if they wish. My gut instinct to this commenter is if your game's been rejected by a publisher, there's plenty of other publishers out there, so you're probably better off going and looking for another publisher and show it to them so there's fresh eyes on it. So next question comes from my video Playtesting, the Heart of Board Game Design. How do I know if my game is good enough? What emotion do you feel most strongly while playing the game? Which moments in the game make you feel clever? How much does the game feel like work? Does the game's theme make sense? Are you engaged right up to the conclusion? To what extent do your decisions matter? And is the game fair? In 10 years running a playtesting group in Wales, I've learnt the power of playtesting. By rigorously interrogating my designs, I've managed to craft products that publishers want to produce and customers want to purchase. And my new book, Adam in Wales Playtesting, tells you everything you need to know in order to do the same. And this one's more of a comment than a question, and the comment is, the only question in playtesting that matters is, did you have fun? Now, I don't agree with that. It's a good first question, but I need more than that, right? If I'm playing with playtesters and I say, did you have fun? And they say, yeah, we really enjoyed it. Sometimes some follow-on questions to kind of coax a bit more information out of them could really, really help. Okay, maybe they did have fun in the half an hour that they played the game, but they didn't enjoy the 2 hours it took for me to explain the rules, or for them to work out the rules from reading the rule book if it was a blind test. Maybe they say they didn't have fun, but it was because of something very specific that happened in the game that we could really do with drawing out of them. Or maybe they don't like that sort of game, and so we need to explore a little bit more about their own preferences and personalities and so on. So I think there are many, many more questions that I would want to ask playtesters that are equally as important as did you have fun? Let's give you another example. What about if I present a massive table full of components that are all hugely expensive and could never actually, get into production? It might be the most fun game in the world, but if I don't explore some other aspects of it, it's never going to get made, is it? So what value is that question? Did you have fun? Yes, we did have fun. Okay, I can go nowhere with this game because it's way too expensive and unwieldy and no one's ever going to publish it. So, yeah, I think it's short-sighted to say it's the only question that matters. And in fact, I wrote a book about playtesting called Adam in Wales Playtesting, which lists hundreds of different questions that you might ask your playtesters, with a rationale for the 100 top questions that I might ask. So yeah, I think there's a lot more to playtesting than just looking at was it fun. Question number 6, and the final question that we'll look at today, comes from a video. It's one of my most watched videos, how to design a deck building game. And the comment is, I hate how this new genre is trying to steal the term deck building that TCGs have been doing for decades prior to these new deck construction style games. Gosh, there's a lot of emotion in this, isn't there? There's a lot of emotive language in this question. I hate how this new genre is trying to steal the general term deck building. And then they would refuse to use it when they talk to them about them as new deck construction style games. I love it. I love the passion. Right? This person loves TCGs. They hate deck building or deck construction style games, and they pour it all into the comment. Love it. Love the passion. However, there's an irony in this, in that they're using the term trading card game, which has been stolen from trading cards which have existed for over 100 years before Richard Garfield created Magic the Gathering. So they've kind of killed their own argument there by using the term trading card game. The point is, deck building games have not stolen anything. Okay, the term deck building, I don't know who first used it, whether it was Donald X Vaccarino, whether it's Rio Grande, stumbling over my words, whether it was Rio Grande Games, or whether it was the players of Dominion who started to use the term deck building to describe that type of game. Frankly, TCGs have not been using it for all that long before. There's something like 15 years between Magic the Gathering and Dominion. It's not that long a period. And Dominion does use deck construction or deck building or whatever you want to call it. It's clearly a good description of the game. The fact that it's been used previously by other games, it's kind of neither here nor there. There is a distinction between pre-game deck building and deck building that happens in the game, and particularly in deck building games like Dominion, where it is the core of the game. That is something a little bit different. Yes, it's confusing. It's confusing to purchasers and so on to have these two things which both really sort of called deck building games, although I wouldn't really call a TCG a deck building game. And it gets muddy, of course, as we get onto things like Dune Imperium or Lost Ruins of Arnak and so on, where the deck building is an element of it, but it's not the whole game. I don't know. Does it matter? It's semantics, really. Okay, but I don't think you can have it both ways, right? If you're going to use the term trading card game, which you've borrowed from cigarette cards and trading cards and baseball cards or whatever wherever you got your trading cards from previously, you can't borrow that term and then start getting cross about people borrowing the term deck building or appropriating that term, taking it away from you. So yeah, although I love the passion of the commenter, yeah, I don't agree with them at all. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this more conversational type of video. They're a little bit easier for me to make right now. As I said earlier, I've got a lot on my plate, so writing long scripts is time consuming and difficult. I'm not going to give up doing that, but it's going to take me some time. If you did enjoy the video, please go back and watch some of my others. I've got others in this series where we've been looking at different YouTube comments and things like this. I think this is the 8th of these that I've done, so there's a few more for you to pick through on the channel. Or you can go and look at my more scripted ones, like the recent How to Design a Nature-Themed Board Game, where a lot more thought has gone into the script and so on. All manner of other game design advice on the channel that you can also find, or go and buy one of my books on Amazon. Yeah, I'd really appreciate that, and hopefully you'll find plenty of information there for you. Sorry these videos are a little bit slower to come out than they have been previously. I'm trying my best to pick that up, but I think we're moving into a new era. Well, I'm moving into a new era, frankly, era of parenthood, where it's going to take me a little bit longer between videos, and I'm having to come to terms with that. So thank you for your patience, and I'll see you on the next video. All the best.